I never expected her to remember my name. Not just my name, the way I took my tea, the exam I'd mentioned once, or that I hated loud doorbells. I first noticed it on a Tuesday night when I was waiting outside my friend Hamza's house, pretending I wasn't early. Their street always felt quieter than mine, softer somehow. The kind of neighborhood where porch lights stayed on long after midnight, and someone was always watering plants, even when they didn't need water. I sat on a low boundary wall, scrolling through my phone, rereading messages I never sent. A half-written text to a girl from university blinked at the top of my screen. "Hey, how have you been?" I deleted it again. The front door opened behind me. "Waiting for Hamza?" she asked. I turned too quickly. His mother stood there holding a small metal tray with 2 cups of tea. She wore a loose gray sweater, sleeves pushed halfway up her arms, like she'd been busy doing something more important before deciding to step outside. She wasn't dressed to impress anyone. That was probably why I noticed her. "Yeah," I said. He said 10 minutes. She smiled in a way adults do when they know 10 minutes means at least 30. He always says that. She handed me a cup without asking if I wanted one. I noticed her hands first, steady, careful hands. A faint burn mark near her thumb. She didn't rush the gesture, just waited until I took it. "Thank you, Ani," I added, unsure if the word fit. "Farah," she corrected gently. "You're old enough now." I nodded, suddenly aware of how awkward my posture looked. I straightened, then immediately felt more awkward for doing it. We stood there quietly. Cars passed at the end of the street. Somewhere a dog barked once and gave up. The tea was too hot, so I held the cup longer than necessary, watching steam curl between us. "You look tired," she said. I laughed softly. "University? That bad?" "Not bad, just loud." She understood that faster than most people did. She didn't ask what I meant, just nodded like loneliness was a language she already spoke. I noticed small things after that. The way she leaned against the doorframe instead of standing fully outside. How she folded the edge of a napkin around her finger absent-mindedly. How her eyes lingered half a second longer than polite conversation required. Hamza still hadn't come out. "You can sit inside if you want," she said. "No point freezing here." I followed her into the living room I'd been in dozens of times before, yet it felt different without noise. The television was off. A book lay open face down on the couch. A lamp cast warm yellow light across everything. She moved around naturally, like she wasn't hosting anyone. "Sugar?" she asked. "I'm okay." She remembered anyway. "Half a spoon." Stirred once. I watched her without meaning to. Not in a romantic way. At least that's what I told myself then. It was more like noticing someone who seemed slightly out of place in her own life. Like she paused before sitting down, as if she'd forgotten why she entered the room. "You boys don't come around much anymore," she said. "We're busy." She smiled faintly. That's what people say when life starts pulling them somewhere else. I didn't know how to answer that, so I nodded and stared at my tea. My phone buzzed. Not the girl from university. Not Hamza. A new message. Unknown number. I glanced down. "Did you reach home safely?" Farah, I looked up at her instinctively. She was already watching me, pretending she wasn't. And for the first time, something about that quiet house didn't feel ordinary anymore. The message sat on my screen longer than it should have. "Did you reach home safely?" "Farah," I typed yes, deleted it, then typed it again. "Yeah, thank you." 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then came back. Good. The roads get empty after 11. That was it. No emoji. No extra words. Still, I reread it twice before putting my phone face down on the desk like it might expose something about me if I kept staring. I told myself she texted because she was polite, because she was Hamza's mother, because adults worried. But she'd never texted me before. The next few days, I caught myself checking my phone more often than usual. Between lectures, while waiting for the bus, even during conversations I barely listened to. Loneliness has strange habits. It makes ordinary attention feel important. I went back to Hamza's house later that week to return a gaming controller he'd left in my bag. He wasn't home again. Farah opened the door, surprised but not really. "Oh," she said softly. "You. Not Hamza's friend. Not Beta. Just you." "He's out," she added. "Football." I figured. I held up the controller like proof I had a reason to be there. She laughed quietly. You boys and your equipment. There was flour on her hands this time. The kitchen behind her smelled warm. Onions, spices, something slow cooking. Come in, she said. I can't touch anything until I wash these. I stepped inside, hovering near the counter while she rinsed her hands. Water ran longer than necessary. She seemed unhurried, comfortable with silence. You cook a lot, I said. Habit, she replied. When the house was louder, I cooked even more. She dried her hands slowly. I asked before thinking. A small pause. My husband moved to Dubai 3 years ago, she said. Work, then distance, then paperwork. She gave a small shrug. Now it's just Hamza and me. She said it plainly, without drama, but something about the way she avoided eye contact made the sentence feel heavier. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. Life rearranges people. She handed me a spoon. Taste this. Tell me if it needs salt. I tasted it. Burned my tongue slightly. It's good, I said quickly. She smiled. You didn't even think. I did. Just fast. We both laughed, quietly, like laughter wasn't supposed to echo too much in that house. While she stirred the pot, we talked about small things. My exams. Her old job as a school librarian before she stopped working. Books she missed. Silence she didn't. At one point, she leaned against the counter beside me instead of across from me. Close enough that I noticed the faint scent of soap and turmeric. Close enough that I became suddenly aware of my hands and didn't know where to put them. This is wrong, I thought. Not because anything happened, nothing did, but because I imagined things. What if Hamza walked in right now? What if someone saw us standing like this? What if she noticed the way I kept looking at her when she wasn't watching? You're very quiet, she said. I think too much. She nodded like she understood completely. I used to, she said. Then life got busy. Now, I think again. We stood there listening to the simmering pot. No music, no television, just the soft sound of breathing and cooking. When I finally turned to leave, she walked me to the door. Text when you reach home, she said casually. I smiled. You worry a lot. Her hand brushed my sleeve as she adjusted something invisible on my shoulder, a piece of lint, maybe nothing at all. The touch lasted less than a second. Still, neither of us moved right away. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. I thought later that night, staring at the ceiling, maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. After that evening, I started timing my visits without admitting it to myself. Not for Hamza, for the hour between Maghrib and dinner, when the house felt suspended between noise and quiet. When she was usually in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, radio playing low enough that you couldn't recognize the song. It became normal too quickly. Tea waiting before I asked. Her asking about my exams before Hamza did. Small conversations that stretched longer than they should. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing obvious. Still, something shifted. One afternoon, Hamza nudged me while we were gaming. You come over a lot now, he said casually, eyes still on the screen. I shrugged. Close by. He smirked. My mom says you're more responsible than me. I laughed, but my grip tightened on the controller. Responsible. The word sat strangely in my chest. That evening felt different the moment I walked in. The lights were dimmer. The television was on, but muted. Farah sat on the couch with a blanket folded neatly beside her, reading glasses low on her nose. She looked up. Oh, she said, surprised. Hamza's out again. I nodded. I already knew. For a second, neither of us suggested I leave. You can sit, she added quietly. I did. Not across from her this time. On the same couch, leaving what felt like a careful distance. The kind strangers keep. The kind that somehow feels louder than closeness. She closed her book, but kept her finger between the pages. You shouldn't spend all your time here, she said suddenly. The words landed softly, but they pushed air out of the room. I'm not. I come for Hamza. I know. A pause. Her gaze stayed on the carpet. You're young, she continued. You should be out. Friends. Girls your age. I laughed awkwardly. That sounds like advice. It is. But she didn't sound convinced. I noticed her hands twisting the edge of the blanket. Folding. Unfolding. A small restless motion. Did I do something wrong? I asked. Her head lifted quickly. No. Never. Too fast. She stood and walked toward the kitchen, creating space where there hadn't been any. I followed without thinking. The kettle clicked on. She faced the counter, not me. This, she said carefully, searching for the right word. People misunderstand things. My stomach tightened. Who? She hesitated. Hamza mentioned you're here often. That explained it. The sudden distance. The careful tone. I can stop coming, I said quietly. She turned then, almost startled. That's not what I meant. Silence again. The kettle started humming. Steam filled the space between us. I just don't want you confused, she added. Confused. As if she wasn't the one who texted first. As if she hadn't memorized my tea order. As if her hand hadn't lingered on my sleeve last time. I wanted to say something honest. Something reckless. Instead, I leaned against the counter and stared at the floor tiles. I'm not confused, I said finally. Her breath caught, barely audible. Our eyes met. Too long. Too direct. She stepped closer, maybe to reach for cups, maybe not. I couldn't tell anymore. The distance between us disappeared without either of us deciding it should. I noticed the faint lines near her eyes. The way she looked nervous, not older, not younger, just human. My hand moved slightly. Not touching. Almost. Her gaze dropped to my lips, then back to my eyes. A second stretched. Another. The kettle screamed suddenly behind us. We both flinched, stepping back at the same time. She turned quickly, pouring water that didn't need pouring yet. Neither of us spoke. And standing there, watching her steady her hand against the counter, I realized we had come dangerously close to something neither of us knew how to name or undo. Things changed after the kitchen moment. Not dramatically. No confrontation. No discussion about boundaries. Just small absences. I started coming less often. Or at least, I told myself I was busy. Assignments. Late study sessions. Random excuses that sounded reasonable enough when spoken aloud. She stopped texting first. That silence felt louder than anything we'd said. A week passed before I saw her again. Not at the house, but outside the neighborhood grocery store, just before sunset. She stood near the entrance holding a small bag of vegetables, searching her purse like she'd misplaced something important. I almost walked past. Almost. Farah. She looked up, visibly relieved. Oh, there you are. There you are. Not hello. Not how are you. You okay? I asked. I forgot my glasses, she said with a soft laugh. Everything looks slightly suspicious without them. I smiled. Need help? She hesitated, only for a second, then nodded. We walked slowly toward the park across the street, while she checked her phone list for groceries she might have missed. Evening traffic hummed around us. Children played near the swings. Ordinary life moved without noticing us. We sat on a worn wooden bench under a tree shedding dry leaves. For a while, neither of us spoke. She watched the children. I watched her. You disappeared, she said finally. Not accusing, just factual. I thought maybe I should, I replied. Her fingers tightened around the grocery bag. Because of what I said, because of what almost happened. The words hung between us, fragile and undeniable. She exhaled slowly. I didn't mean to make you feel unwelcome. You didn't. Another pause. The wind lifted a strand of her hair across her face. Without thinking, I reached out and tucked it behind her ear. The gesture surprised both of us. My hand lingered half a second too long before pulling back. She didn't move away. Instead, she looked straight ahead, voice quieter now. You remind me of a version of life that feels unfinished, she admitted. I swallowed. That sounds dangerous. It is. Her honesty landed heavier than any confession could. I spend my days being someone's mother, she continued. Someone responsible. Someone sensible. And then you walk in and I forget which version of myself I'm supposed to be. I stared at the ground, trying to slow my heartbeat. I don't come here to confuse you, I said. I just feel different around you. She laughed softly, almost sad. That's exactly the problem. A group of teenagers passed by, loud and careless. We both fell silent until their voices faded. She turned toward me then, eyes searching mine like she wanted certainty I couldn't give. You're Hamza's friend, she said quietly. You're at the beginning of everything. And you're not at the end of anything, I replied before I could stop myself. Her expression changed, surprise first, then something warmer, more vulnerable. For a moment, We just looked at each other. No pretending anymore. No safe distance. Her hand rested on the bench between us, close enough that our fingers almost touched. I could feel the heat of her presence, the unspoken permission, the hesitation wrapped around it. She inhaled slowly. If we keep sitting here like this, she began, voice barely above a whisper. She didn't finish. I leaned slightly closer without realizing it. The world felt very still. Her eyes flickered to my lips again. Things changed after the kitchen moment. Not dramatically. No confrontation. No discussion about boundaries. Just small absences. I started coming less often. Or at least, I told myself I was busy. Assignments. Late study sessions. Random excuses that sounded reasonable enough when spoken aloud. She stopped texting first. That silence felt louder than anything we'd said. A week passed before I saw her again. Not at the house, but outside the neighborhood grocery store just before sunset. She stood near the entrance holding a small bag of vegetables, searching her purse like she'd misplaced something important. I almost walked past. Almost. Farah. She looked up, visibly relieved. Oh, there you are. There you are. Not hello. Not how are you. You okay? I asked. I forgot my glasses, she said with a soft laugh. Everything looks slightly suspicious without them. I smiled. Need help? She hesitated, only for a second, then nodded. We walked slowly toward the park across the street, while she checked her phone list for groceries she might have missed. Evening traffic hummed around us. Children played near the swings. Ordinary life moved without noticing us. We sat on a worn wooden bench under a tree shedding dry leaves. For a while, neither of us spoke. She watched the children. I watched her. You disappeared, she said finally. Not accusing, just factual. I thought maybe I should, I replied. Her fingers tightened around the grocery bag. Because of what I said. Because of what almost happened. The words hung between us, fragile and undeniable. She exhaled slowly. I didn't mean to make you feel unwelcome. You didn't. Another pause. The wind lifted a strand of her hair across her face. Without thinking, I reached out and tucked it behind her ear. The gesture surprised both of us. My hand lingered half a second too long before pulling back. She didn't move away. Instead, she looked straight ahead, voice quieter now. You remind me of a version of life that feels unfinished, she admitted. I swallowed. That sounds dangerous. It is. Her honesty landed heavier than any confession could. I spend my days being someone's mother, she continued. Someone responsible. Someone sensible. And then you walk in and I forget which version of myself I'm supposed to be. I stared at the ground, try to slow my heartbeat. I don't come here to confuse you, I said. I just feel different around you. She laughed softly, almost sad. That's exactly the problem. A group of teenagers passed by, loud and careless. We both fell silent until their voices faded. She turned toward me then, eyes searching mine like she wanted certainty I couldn't give. You're Hamza's friend, she said quietly. You're at the beginning of everything. And you're not at the end of anything, I replied before I could stop myself. Her expression changed, surprise first, then something warmer, more vulnerable. For a moment, we just looked at each other. No pretending anymore. No safe distance. Her hand rested on the bench between us, close enough that our fingers almost touched. I could feel the heat of her presence, the unspoken permission, the hesitation wrapped around it. She inhaled slowly. If we keep sitting here like this, she began, voice barely above a whisper. She didn't finish. I leaned slightly closer without realizing it. The world felt very still. Her eyes flickered to my lips again. And then she asked, softly, almost to herself, what are we actually doing? And then she asked, softly, almost to herself, what are we actually doing? After the bench, I expected something to change. A message. A sign. Some quiet acknowledgement that whatever existed between us had finally stepped into the light. Instead, everything slowed. She didn't text that night. Or the next. I told myself she needed space. That we both did. The conversation had crossed into territory neither of us had prepared for. Maybe distance was the sensible outcome. Still, I checked my phone more than usual. Nothing. 3 days later, I stopped by Hamza's house under the excuse of returning notes. I rang the bell once, already rehearsing casual conversation in my head. Hamza opened the door. "Bro, you vanished," he said, pulling me inside. The house felt different immediately. Louder. The television playing news. A suitcase near the staircase. "Guests?" I asked. "Oh," he said casually, "my dad's coming back for a few weeks." The sentence landed strangely. "From Dubai." "Yeah, some work thing didn't go through. Mom's been stressed all week." My chest tightened before I understood why. I glanced toward the kitchen. She stood there, back turned, arranging plates. Her movements were precise, controlled in a way I hadn't seen before. When she noticed me, she smiled politely. Not warmly, politely. "Hello," she said. Not my name this time. I nodded. Hamza kept talking about football, exams, random things, but my attention stayed fixed on her quiet distance. She avoided being alone in the same room as me. Always moving, always finding something to do. At one point, our eyes met across the dining table. She looked away first. It felt intentional. Later, while Hamza searched upstairs for something, I ended up standing near the kitchen doorway again, the same place where everything had nearly changed. She kept washing dishes even though they were already clean. "You didn't tell me," I said quietly. Her hands paused under running water. I didn't know how. The faucet continued rushing between us. "He's coming back." "For a while," she replied. "Maybe longer." She finally turned, but there was a careful emotional wall in her expression now. "This is why I said people misunderstand things," she added gently. I nodded, though understanding didn't make it easier. "So, we just pretend nothing happened." Her gaze softened, regret flickering through. Nothing did happen. The words weren't cruel, just protective. For her, for me, for everyone else. Hamza's footsteps echoed upstairs, and she stepped farther away instinctively. Distance restored, roles reassigned. I left soon after. No lingering gudvie, no quietea. Just a normal exit through a familiar door that suddenly felt unfamiliar. That night, I opened our chat window. I typed, "Are you okay?" Deleted it. Typed again, "I miss talking to you." Deleted that too. The cursor blinked in the empty space where honesty almost lived. Outside, traffic passed. Someone laughed somewhere down the street. Life continued as if nothing had shifted. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. I stared at her name on my phone for a long time, then locked the screen without sending anything at all. I avoided the street for almost 2 weeks. Not deliberately at first, just different routes home. Longer walks, staying late at university even when I had nothing left to study. Distance felt safer than clarity. Then one evening, my phone buzzed while I was waiting for a bus. Her name, just one message. "Are you free for a minute?" No explanation, no greeting. I stared at it long enough that the bus came and left without me noticing. "Yes," I replied. Her next message came quickly. "I'm outside." My heart stumbled. I turned, and there she was across the road, standing near the small bakery, hands tucked in her coat pockets like she wasn't sure she should be there. I crossed immediately. Up close, she looked tired. Not physically, emotionally, like sleep hadn't solved anything lately. "Hi," I said. We both smiled awkwardly, the kind strangers exchange when they know too much about each other. "Walk," she asked. We moved toward the quiet park nearby, without discussing where we were going. The same bench from before waited under the tree, leaves thinner now, air colder. We sat, careful distance again. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Cars passed. Someone jogged by. Ordinary sounds filled the space where courage was supposed to be. "I didn't want things to end like that," she said finally. I nodded. "Me neither." She stared ahead, gathering words slowly. "My husband is staying longer," she said. "We're trying to figure things out. Not fixing, just deciding." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I listened. "I kept thinking about that day on this bench," she continued. "About how easy it felt to forget everything else." Her voice softened, and that scared me. I understood, more than I wanted to. "I never wanted to complicate your life," I said. "You didn't," she replied quickly. "You reminded me I was still someone." The sentence hung there. Not mother, not wife, just someone. She turned toward me then, eyes honest in a way they hadn't been before. I waited for you to come back, she admitted. I thought you didn't want me to. I wanted you to, she said quietly. That was the problem. The honesty landed gently but heavily. I looked at my hands, searching for the right words. I like being around you, I said, more than I should have. She smiled faintly. I know. Silence settled again, not uncomfortable this time, just real. So what happens now? I asked. She inhaled slowly, choosing carefully. We don't pretend it meant nothing, she said. But we also don't turn it into something that hurts everyone. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't acceptance. It was adulthood. Her hand rested on the bench between us again. This time, I didn't hesitate. My fingers touched hers lightly. She didn't pull away. We stayed like that, hands barely touching, warmth shared without possession. No promises. No dramatic goodbye. Just acknowledgement. After a while, she squeezed my hand gently, then let go. I'm glad I met you, she said. I smiled, feeling the weight and relief of it at the same time. Me too. She stood, adjusted her coat, then looked back at me, softer now, peaceful in a way I hadn't seen before. Take care of yourself, she said. I nodded. Okay. And somehow, that simple word felt like the bravest thing either of us had said. Tom didn't rush after that night. It moved the way real life does, quietly, without announcing change. I stopped avoiding the street. Classes continued. Exams came and went. Hamza complained about assignments like nothing in the world had shifted. His father stayed for a while, then left again for work overseas. No dramatic forward. Just another suitcase near the staircase one morning. Life rearranged itself slowly. I didn't visit as often anymore. Not because I wasn't welcome, but because something between Farah and me had settled into a different shape. Softer, steadier, less hungry. Weeks later, I ran into her again at the bakery around 8:47 a.m., the same place where she had waited for me that evening. She stood at the counter ordering tea, reading glasses perched low on her nose. Morning light caught the silver strands in her hair I'd somehow never noticed before. She turned and smiled when she saw me. Not surprised this time, just warm. You're up early, she said. Trying to become responsible, I joked. She laughed, that quiet laugh that never asked for attention. We walked together toward the park, cups warming our hands against the cool morning air. The bench was empty again, leaves gathered beneath it like time had been keeping our place. We sat without hesitation. No tensión, no confusión, just familiarity. Our things at home. I asked carefully. She nodded. Peaceful. Different but peaceful. She didn't explain further, and I didn't ask. Some answers didn't need details anymore. And you? She asked. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, I said. She smiled knowingly. That's progress. We drank our tea in comfortable silence. The same bench. The same city, noise in the distance. But the feeling had changed. The urgency was gone, replaced by something quieter, understanding without expectation. We started meeting like that sometimes. Morning tea, short walks, conversations about books, work, small frustrations, ordinary victories. Nothing secretive, nothing hidden. Just two people who had once almost crossed a line, choosing instead to build something slower and kinder. One evening months later, Hamza joked while we all sat in the living room. You two talk like old friends. Farah and I exchanged a glance. Old friends. It felt accurate. And yet, there was something underneath it, a shared history made of pauses, almosts, and choices neither of us regretted. Outside, the evening call to prayer echoed softly through the neighborhood. She handed me a cup of tea without asking how I wanted it. Still half a spoon of sugar. Still remembered. Our hands brushed briefly when I took it, and this time neither of us pulled away quickly. The moment wasn't dangerous anymore. Just human. Life wasn't perfect. I still felt uncertain about the future. She still carried responsibilities I couldn't fully understand. But somewhere along the way, the loneliness that had followed both of us had softened. We hadn't chased romance. We had learned how to stay. As I stood to leave that night, she walked me to the door like always. Text when you reach home, she said. I smiled. You'll worry anyway. Of course, she replied. I stepped outside, turning back once. She stood in the doorway, calm, present, exactly where she wanted to be. And I realized something then. We didn't end up together because of one moment or confession. We ended up together because we chose patience over impulse, understanding over desire, presence over fantasy. Some loves don't arrive loudly. They grow in the spaces where two people learn how not to lose each other. Later that night, my phone buzzed. Did you reach home safely? Farah, I typed back immediately. Yes. Then added, without overthinking, tea tomorrow. 3 dots appeared. Always. And somehow, that simple word felt like the real beginning.